Hello everybody and welcome out to another Dice Tower daily unboxing video. Today we're taking a look at Twilight Struggle Red Sea Conflict in the Horn of Africa. This is a two-player only game. This is a smaller, kind of quicker looking version of Twilight Struggle, which is a highly acclaimed two-player game. And this one is supposed to take place in 35 minutes, 1 to 2 players. This is a GMT 3 out of 9 complexity, which means not as light as you would expect. But actually, I played other games that are like 3s in their complexity. And this one looks promising. It doesn't look too difficult. 9 out of 9 solo ability, or what do they call that? Solitaire suitability. This is going to be using some of the same systems from Jason Matthews' Twilight Struggle, the original. You see the designer on here, Jason Matthews. Graphics done by Terry Leeds, published by GMT Games. So, what's going on here? Two-player standalone card-driven game that builds on the award-winning Twilight Struggle system. Sure, very cool. Year's 1974. The Cold War is playing out still. This asks players once again to answer the summons of the trumpets and bear the burden of a Twilight Struggle. This time around East Africa, Arabian Gulf, and the vital sea lanes between them. Oh, that's a good setting. You see the map on here is way smaller. Well, let's take a look at the actual stuff here. But, I mean, the Twilight Struggle map is quite a spectacle. And I'm not making fun of the way that it looks or anything like that. I actually think that it looks very fitting, but it's just, there's so much stuff to look at. So I want to look at the board here before I go into the rulebook, actually, just to kind of show you here that the board just has these few areas really in it. The original Twilight Struggle is a worldwide map, and then it's also just, you know, if you're playing for the first time, you don't know which areas are really that vital and everything like that. This looks like it's kind of condensing everything down into this, but you still see things that you're familiar with. The DEFCON status with the big kaboom at the end, meaning bad. You have the space race track here. You can be moving up this to get bonuses and stuff, and there's victory points, required military operations and points and such. And then it looks like there's kind of player aid type stuff here on each side of it, so you can sit across each other, and you've got your player information on this side, and you've got the other player information on this side over here. Yeah, it's a good mounted board. I mean, I do really like the look of it, even though it's, you might say it's not beautiful, but I mean, I'm liking the way that this kind of looks. It's not hard to take in the information, which is a huge compliment. Okay, so you got the different areas. You have Africa, you have Middle East, and so, yeah, just 2 areas instead of like the multiple areas, Europe, Central America, North America, and stuff from the original Twilight Struggle. So let's take a look here. You got 2 rule books. You have the rule book, and you have the solo rules and background booklet. Let's pop open first the rule book here. Quick start rules for experienced Twilight Struggle players. I bet people will appreciate that because the Twilight Struggle is an immensely popular game. So flashpoint rule for Ethiopian Somalia, Romanian autonomy. Means nothing to me because I'm not that familiar with Twilight Struggle. I've played it a little bit on the app. All right, here's the introduction, components listing. Game setup, game sequence, card play, operations, coup attempts. It's a dense looking rule book, but I mean, what you do on each turn in Twilight Struggle is not terribly complex, but it's just all the interaction points that are vitally important. Events, DEFCON status, military ops, required military ops, Romanian autonomy, scoring and victory. So there's different scoring cards throughout the deck of cards that you're playing as action cards or using them for different purposes. Some of those cards are scoring cards that you, if you're dealt them, I'm guessing just like in the original, you have to play them out at some point in that round. So it's a very interesting game. Tournament play. These rules are optional and not required for friendly play. They're simply offered as guidelines for playing Twilight Struggle Red Sea as a competitive tournament game. Interesting. So if you want to be more serious, you can bid to determine which side you're going to play. During the reveal held cards phase, play expose the bottom edge of their cards to their opponents. They know that they are not scoring cards. That's interesting. I mean, it's neat, though, that they're like, hey, this doesn't have to be for every time that you play the game. Optional integrated variants to utilize cards from the original Twilight Struggle to create a slightly longer Twilight Struggle Red Sea experience. Furthermore, using the same basic mechanism, designated cards from Twilight Struggle Red Sea can be added to the original game. That's interesting. I mean, so maybe you could sort of view this as like a slight, small module, if you wish, to add to your Twilight Struggle game, the base game. I'm curious if people who are very familiar with that game are interested or excited about that at all. So you can see that by the page index here, you have examples of two-player play. Now at page 8, you have the solo rules and then solo example of play. So even though this is a big book that says solo rules and other stuff, it's actually a lot of other stuff. It's only a few pages of solo rules. So you see, GMT is good about this. Here's examples of how turns go. If you want to play out an example turn, you can follow several pages here, and it shows pictures and stuff of all the different cards to play and the effects of them in the board state. And now, starting at page 8, you've got solo rules, solo opponent rules. Like I said, a little bit dense here, but if it's like some of their other solo games, Flashpoint South China Sea being one that's coming to mind, then it shouldn't be too difficult to kind of just follow along as you figure out what's going on here. And that's it. It's two kind of dense page turns, or one page turn, I suppose, of solo rules. And then here's the examples of how the play goes down, which I like that. And then the other thing that I love in GMT and other war game publisher rule books and stuff, especially the appendices, card background information on all of these things. These are not clarifications of the cards themselves, but historical information of who the Eritrean Popular Liberation Front is, for example. Okay, well, you have a whole historical background on that. And I admire stuff like that so much, because if you are getting into the theme, then you can have an easy resource right here to kind of go into designer notes, solo designer notes. Jason Carr. I wonder if he did the solo mode actually on South China Sea, now that I'm thinking about it. So there you go. That's that. Now let's look at this. Just a few other things we got here. We got all the tokens. These look out of Twilight Struggle. Obviously, the very similar kind of a thing going on. US control, and then USSR control. Let's punch some of these out. They punch out really nicely, actually, like super, super nicely. Well, there you go. That's good. You have your 2 dice. Oh, cool. Okay. And these are on the 6 side. You'll notice that 1 is on the back. Tom has that philosophy of, if you're going to have a custom die, put your special symbol on the 6, not the 1, because you want that to be the most exciting thing to roll. These are a little bit bigger than average dice. I forget the millimeter is, but anyway, I like those. And I rolled a flat 1. There you go. Fantastic. That's my luck in this game. Let's take a look here at the cards, and then we'll wrap up, because I think we've taken a nice little look here. And now I'm very interested in trying this one, especially the idea of being able to play a Twilight Struggle-ish game in 35 minutes sounds very, very intriguing. And also, if Jason Carr is the solo designer I'm thinking of, I would not at all mind trying this out solo as well. GMT cards have a certain feel to them. They're not bad, they're not thin, but they're just not that elegant on the edges. I don't really know the best way to describe it. You see how they kind of stick to each other a little bit until you kind of break them up. But, so all these cards are the same backs. So you have different cards here, different effects. Remove USSR influence from a non-USSR controlled country, add an influence to 2 US controlled countries, right? So you just, this is very similar to the way that the cards look in Twilight Struggle. Remove from play if used as an event. So a lot of those same types of effects you're seeing here, switching out control, having big changes, but they're going to be one-time use kind of cards. The US may designate one roll this turn to be either a 1 or a 6 prior to rolling the die, but remove that card from the game if you're using it for that event. I do like that tension, that tough decision making. So you see the cards are split as well between mid-war, late war. Let's see. yeah, just the historical research that goes into these. Now, here's some scoring cards. Here you go. For example, Africa scoring card. We're using the same parameters here: presence, domination, and control. You know, the same types of thing that you saw in the original Twilight Struggle, if you're familiar with that. Is that the only scoring? Oh, here we go. Here's the Middle East scoring card. There you go. One for each region, basically. Presence, domination, control. Huge amount of influence there for the Middle East. So, may not be held, so you have to play in that round when you're dealt them, whether you like it or not. So there you go. That is a look here. Just a little look into, without much explanation, of Twilight Struggle Red Sea conflict in the Horn of Africa. Player aids here, I failed to mention actually. These look good, look useful. Not really pictographic or anything like that, but a good explanation of, hey, this is the different ways to use the cards. US playable events table, so you can have this and know, hey, this is what could happen from the US side. Hey, this is what could happen from the USSR side, because these event cards are in the deck, and if they get played, that's what's going to happen. And that's the trick of Twilight Struggle, is just knowing all of that. And then this one here looks like the actual player aid. Here you go. The aid itself for solo game. Okay, here we go. So solo if you're playing against the USSR faction, and then solo if you're playing against the US faction. All right, well, thanks for coming out to another Dice Tower daily unboxing video. Thanks for joining me here as I take a look at Twilight Struggle Red Sea conflict in the Horn of Africa. Have yourselves a fantastic day.